And next thing I know, he's walking in my front door with a 44 Magnum, doesn't say a word, lifts it up, blows my face off. I mean, face splattered all over the ceiling. My eyeball flew out. I watched my eye fly out of my head and land on the shelf above my sink. I saw the blue in my eye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Crime and Entertainment. I got a very special guest here. We actually had a chance meeting. I think we met on a Brad Leah post because he puts these things on Instagram and it says, like, you can be a guest on the podcast. And what they don't tell you is they want to charge you 25 grand to do that. And I seen you comment and it was like, man, I'll come on there. I've been, shot a couple times and locked up a few times and but wound up turning it all around. And I'm like, I think I commented, I'm like, dude, he's going to charge you 25 grand, but you can come on my show for free. So here you are. Please welcome Johnathan Harris. Johnathan, how you doing, my friend?
Hey, man, doing good, brother. Glad to be here, man. Glad you give me a chance to tell my story. And been able to learn a few things about each other. And yeah, man, when I wrote him and he said 25 grand, I was like, whoa, what? 25 grand to do a podcast? What?
That's fucking insane. I mean, it's just really ridiculous. And you've got a great story. You and I have chatted quite a bit before we were actually able to get this episode down. And, I think when somebody's trying to spread a message like that, especially one of positivity, of how I think that's the best message you can spread is how you were going down that wrong road. You were going down a bad path. You've got lasting effects that we'll get into, from some of the choices that you made, but you still managed to turn it around and get it out the mud. And those are really the stories that I like to platform on this channel, because a lot of times I think when people get stuck in that rut and they get down, they think that's it. That's where they got to stay and that's where they're going to be forever. And to highlight that, hey, that's not always the case. You can climb out. You can get to where you want to be, no matter what your gift is. Some people have gifts of singing. Some people have gifts of acting. Some people have gifts of fighting. It doesn't matter what it is. You can get out of it, and I think that's important to highlight those shows. So I'm glad you could make it on
here. Yeah, that's what's up. And like I said, I appreciate the opportunity to tell it, and I'll definitely share some of the gruesomeness. And I've definitely had, and I know a lot of people have had a rough life, but I can honestly say I've had a rougher life than most. And I've definitely fallen farther down the scale than most people, especially after being shot 4 times, including once in the face with a 44 Magnum, and learning how to walk again, learning how to see again, being a 21-year alcoholic, a bad alcoholic. And just, coming from, being a white guy growing up, growing up in a decent little ghetto there, got to learn some things the hard way, single mother, Section 8. I know a lot of people have experienced that, and they can at least relate to most of my story and see where I'm coming from and hopefully use it to get out. So,
right.
I definitely don't talk about my stuff like it's some sad story, because I definitely don't look like no sad story. That's a fact,
Right.
and no matter where somebody comes from, they can get it.
Right. Well, let's take it from the beginning, man. Give us a little bit of background on like early life, where you grew up, what home life was like, and how that kind of shaped the path that you were beginning to head down.
Well, I've got an older brother. He's a couple years older than me. So most of the people I grew up with were older, a little more mature, and knew a little bit more than I did. So I just kind of followed them, and wanted to be one of the big boys. And that got me in a lot of trouble. And most of the people that I know today are dead. still in prison or in some rehab somewhere, some kind of institution. I got a couple of friends that's made it out, but like I said, single mother home, Section 8. We really didn't have any guidance. My brother didn't know what he was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. We never had a male figure in our life to show us any kind of starting point of, what does a man even look like? Where are we supposed to start? And the times that my dad did try to come around, there was a few occasions he got his windows busted out with baseball bats. I remember one Easter Sunday, man, my dad was pissed. He come to pick us up one weekend, and he was out there laying on the horn, like, get them boys ready, get them out here, I mean, my dad tried to be a father, but boy, she come out the front door with a baseball bat and bust his back windshield out. Cops showing up, man, he's kicking my mom's front door in, chasing her through the house. And she didn't know that my little stepbrother, who was a baby at the time, was in the back seat. She didn't know he was in a car seat back there. So it ended up being kind of a serious situation. But we had many situations like that, stolen cars, grew up stealing cars. Stole my mom's car around the holidays one time, and my brother wrecks it, being chased by a neighborhood rent-a-cop or wannabe rent-a-cop, and ended up crashing into a building. My mom and my aunt come home from getting presents, and I want to say Christmas or one of our birthdays. It was either one of our birthdays or Christmas, but she comes home to find her car missing and cops everywhere. Her car's totaled, and this guy's out there talking to the cops. So we were unruly, to say the least, to put it mildly.
So when you say stolen cars, like, was that something you guys did a lot of, or just here and there? Was it more for joyriding? Were you selling them?
More for joyriding to get places. We ended up. My mom tried to move us out of that neighborhood when I was about 12, and we had moved back to Dayton, Ohio. I'm originally from Dayton, Ohio. We had moved to Kettering, Ohio when I was young, and grew up in a place called Kettering Square. And they had made this Section 8 housing right there in the middle of Kettering, which Kettering's a pretty nice city. But these three little plats where we were from were pretty rough. And so we had ended up moving to Kettering, and I'm sorry I got sidetracked by a thought. What was your question?
Oh, I was just saying, like, was it more for like joyriding, or were you guys taking the cars and selling them, chop shop scenario? What was kind of the motive, or the drive behind the carjackings or stealings?
So my mother ended up trying to move us out of there when I was about 12 years old. She moved us back to Dayton to get away from that scene. My brother had just did a year in Tico. I had just got out of juvie, and Tico was a prison for teenagers back then. Now I think it's a mental health ward up in Columbus, Ohio. But he had did a year for rioting. I just got out of juvie. She moved us back to Dayton. And so we steal cars to connect with our friends. We steal cars to go do robberies. We steal cars to go do hits and stuff like that. Cigarette runs, beer runs, basically where you run into a store, grab all the beer and cigarettes you could carry, run out the door, hightail it out, dish the stolen car, run off, be good, So.
And how often were you guys doing that?
I think I'm past the statute of limitations, I believe. So, that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
that was a regular occurrence. We definitely. I know there was one night we went around the city playing, real life bumper cars. We probably destroyed a lot of people's lives. We probably cost a lot of people a lot of money, and we just did not see the consequence.
Yeah.
We had no consequences from my mother, at all. And she was gone most of the time. She's trying to work. She had a cleaning job. Sometimes it'd be third shift, sometimes it'd be first shift, sometimes it'd be second shift. So, kids left to their own devices with no father figure, we just had no concept of consequences and value. What anything was valued at, even money, because we
Mm-hmm.
never had money. And one time, we robbed somebody and got some money, and I remember I looked back and I just had no idea of what the value of this money was, what it could buy, what it was worth, what it could do. It was just like blowing money on dumb shit because I don't realize what I have in my pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody else knew, but I didn't.
Yeah. So with that being said, I'm assuming it's not too long before you get pinched by the cops.
Oh, definitely. So I ended up got busted on a burglary, and I ended up going to juvie 17. I had 21 I'm sorry, 11 underage consumptions from the age of 12 to 17. So they went ahead. I did a couple months in the county, and then they sent me to a rehab in Dayton.
Okay.
And I ended up doing 4 months in this rehab in Dayton and Pathways. Excuse me. And while I was there, and coincidentally, this man had an eye patch too. His name was Gary Jackson. And not only that, but he was you know, really the second black guy I ever talked to and was friends with. And he had an eye patch. He was into music. He used to sing in a band. And he was the only man that ever took time to actually speak to me about matters that were important. I still miss him to this day. Um, his name was Gary Jackson. And, just the first man to ever take the time to speak to me like I was a man.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a pretty profound impact on me at the time. I ended up getting out of that program, and my mother had left home when I was about 15. I saw her again when I was 17 when I got out of rehab because they had to release me to my mom because I was still 17. And she sent me to Georgia to go work for my dad and live down there. Um, but I stayed sober for quite some time after that, just because of the impact that man had on my life.
Now, when you say sober, what was it? Just purely drinking? Was it pills? I mean, what all was the going on?
The first time I ever drank, I was 9 years old. My brother and some friends had stole a bottle of rum, brought it back to the house, and that was the first time I had ever drank. And you'll hear a lot of people that are recovered alcoholics or in the rooms. They'll talk about, and it says it in the big book, the feeling that I had arrived once I took that first drink. The feeling that I had arrived in life hit me all at once, all of a sudden. And that's how it was for me the first time that I ever took a drink. I felt like all my fears were gone because when you live that type of lifestyle, I don't care how much you don't show fear, you're constantly living in fear, just like being in prison, just like being locked up. You're always in fear. You're always on guard. You're always watching yourself. And so when you take that first drink of alcohol, all of your cares and worries go away. And it's the first time you've ever felt that in your whole life, because your whole
Right.
life has been nothing but chaos and disorder, has been pain, trouble. And you take that drink and it just disappears.
Mm-hmm.
And the magnitude of just how that feels, just hits you. And it's like, this is my savior, you know and I don't know, some predisposition coming from an Irish Catholic background. My whole family's alcoholics, you know what I'm saying? Alcoholic, drug addict family. Maybe that has something to do with it, but maybe it was a little bit of nature, maybe it's a little bit of nurture.
Well, and I think too, when you grow up and you're, exposed to those things real young, and then that becomes a norm for you. I think it does just that. It just becomes part of everyday life. It doesn't really seem that big of a deal. Yeah, I'm drinking. So what? But it's only not big of a deal because it seems normal to you. It might not be normal to Johnny up the road around the corner, but it's normal to you. And I think a lot of times, like you think, I've interviewed a lot of people whose fathers turned out to be like these famous drug smugglers or mob guys or whatever. And they're like, I didn't know. To me, it was just dad. So when you grow up, you don't really know the effects and the stuff like that, the alcohol. To you, at 10 years old, maybe having a drink seemed normal. It was the other kids that were weird or, no, you don't do that. And so I think when that becomes a norm, you start taking on those battles a lot earlier than normal people. And like you said, especially if it puts you in a state of I've arrived, and if you did have some insecurities or whatever the case may be, if that brings you out of that, then that becomes more of a euphoria type thing. Oh, I got to do that to get here. I want to get back to that place.
Oh, total insecurity, especially for kids out there being raised in that same environment. And there's no shame in saying that. You have zero
Mm-hmm.
starting point, you have zero guidance, you have zero reference on how or what a man looks like and how to be one. It's you never admit it, but whether you admit it or not, it is a life of total insecurity, just like you said. That is it.
Yeah.
100% insecurity. So, and
So
you're looking at the people around you like, how do they act? That's how I need to act, and and that's social integration. That's a part of growing up. We learn how to act. We learn right and wrong, and what's good and bad by watching the people around us, and we assimilate.
right. When you had to go to that rehab, was that order because of an arrest or you just got sent to rehab?
That was because I got busted with that burglary.
Okay, that's because you got busted with a burglary. Well,
And but they were looking, it was a burglary in which I was drunk and yelling at the cops, and luckily they didn't beat my 17-year-old ass, but um but they had looked at my record and just saw so many drinking charges, and they were like, oh, okay, this is where this guy is. They
yeah.
saw everything I didn't. you know
Now, when you get out of this rehab, you spoke about the guy that you talked to in there, and he kind of, maybe struck a chord with you. Did it change after you got out of that point, or was there still a while left to go?
Still a while left to go. Everything in my life, all my change was hard. And I'll tell you the main reason is because I never learned how to listen until about
Mm,
the age of 29.
right,
So, in between that span of 17 to 29, I still had another 12 years of struggle and fight. Now, I did know that I needed to change from that point forward. And that is the first time I realized I needed to change, when I
mm,
was about 17. But realizing you need to change, and figuring out how to do it and what's the best way to do it when you have no reference, that's
right.
another story.
So, what was the next phase after that? Was there more arrest? Did the drinking continue? Was it hard to stop that? Any new habits? Where were we at there?
I did manage to quit drinking for a little while. I did start staying out of trouble. Most of my friends ended up going to prison. Going to Georgia was one of the best things that ever happened to me.
Got you out
Now,
of that environment.
yeah, yeah, it did change my environment, and I went back to work full time, which I always made money and I always worked. Um, Even when my dad was able to pick me up as a kid, because he started a business when I was born. So whenever he would get us, we would go to work with him and stuff on the weekend, painting apartments or doing whatever he was doing. He started an antenna removal business. He always started his own businesses. So that was one thing that will come back to help me in the future, because I saw what that looked like. Hey, any man can start their own business. But between then and 2005, I ended up getting shot by the police. I got shot 3 times. I got shot in the lung, the stomach, and the hand. That was a crazy situation. And although I'm not going to go into too much detail about it, and people can say what they want to, I don't give a shit what people have to say about it, to be honest with you. Fuck them. Because it was a crooked city and God prevailed. He told me exactly what he was going to do. And, you know, and the coerced people that took the stand from the DA, they broke down, told the truth. Certain people testified for me that should have never testified for me, but they got up and told the truth. And I beat a crooked system that was trying to throw me in prison for 30 years just so I couldn't sue
Damn.
them. Now, I can't say I didn't do anything wrong, but I definitely wasn't guilty of what they charged me of.
Right.
I did have a gun, and I was out of line, but at the same time, I never threatened anybody and never did what they said I did.
What did they say you did?
They tried to accuse me of aggravated burglary, intimidation of a victim or a witness, carrying a concealed weapon, and felonious assault on a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up going to trial, waited on trial for about 9 months. And they tried to say I burglarized my own house that I had the keys to. They tried to say that I intimidated a victim or a witness by telling my girlfriend if she called the cops that I was going to kill her when I had no idea that the cops were even called. And carrying a concealed weapon. I had a shotgun on the seat of my truck, and that's not concealed.
No.
And felonious assault on a police officer. Never once did I threaten them or say I was going to kill them. They have been under Judge Goldie in Greene County. Well, she's dead now. She died of cirrhosis of the liver. She was on an ankle bracelet while she was judge of Greene County.
Damn.
For DUIs.
Not sure how that's even possible.
And this city would farm people into the jails for money because they would get federal funding.
Right.
Either state or federal funding for the people in the jail. And it was just like a revolving door. They'd do anything. I went to jail for things that I never committed before, and I didn't even know I was going to jail that day. I didn't even know I committed a crime. They pulled up and took me to jail for drinking or something when I was never even drinking. They took 2 of my vehicles and pounded them where I could never get them back. And I would just start a job and just get a vehicle, just start a job, and then they would follow me and take my car and impound it forever, or put a seizure on it, or some other, and then they'd throw me in jail for 4 or 5 months, 6 months, and then wait till I get out and then do it again. And finally, I got sick of their shit. But
that's like the most shitty thing is when you have those small town police departments that's how they thrive and that's how they make money and that's how they seemingly stay afloat is to lock people up, and they need people incarcerated to be able to function and continue their business. And unfortunately, people that are in there are not always guilty.
yeah.
Yeah, and you and I have had a conversation about that.
So I'm not saying all cops are bad. Thank God for police officers. I think defund the police is the dumbest thing that anybody ever thought of, to be honest with you. And, like I said, I got friends that are cops. I'm not saying all cops are bad. I'm saying these ones were.
Right. And that's one of those things. Like I don't. I'll tell you right now. Typically, I do not trust police to do the right thing, and that's because of a personal experience that I've had where a number of them done the wrong thing. So it's kind of ruined it for me. But that's not to say there aren't good police out there. I just don't trust officers or police officers enough to find out. I mean, I actually have a brother-in-law. That's a police officer. So I know him. I was forced to, get to know him, because he's part of the family and he's a great guy. And I'm sure there are great guys, but I don't want to be put in a situation where I need to find out if they're good or not. You know what I'm saying? I'd just rather steer clear of all interactions with police officers if I can help it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that is my philosophy today. stay out the way and stick to my purpose and just keep winning. That's that's
So
how to do it, man. But
you made the statement when you got out, like that was you were tired of it. That was it. What did you mean by that?
that I was tired of.
I'm assuming you meant going back, or yeah, going. Were you talking about going back, like tired of constantly being in and out? Were you just kind of going to be trying to straighten out the road here, or what was that?
Well, I've been trying to get right for so long, but my father was and is a narcissist, and I say that I realize that nobody is 100% narcissist all the time. Nobody is 100% one thing or another all the time. Even bipolar people are not bipolar 24/7. You know, they're bipolar maybe most of the time or half the time, but they're not bipolar all the time. People that are narcissists, but my father was seriously narcissistic and seriously abusive. Especially by the time that we went down there, we just had no connection with him. He didn't feel a connection to us. We were more like business partners to him. I spent the better part over 15 years, aside from traveling around the country doing construction. I spent the rest of my time building his business, and I made a lot of money. He paid me well, and me and my brothers and a couple other people, we built his business. But I still really didn't have any guidance because of that. I ended up turning out a lot like my dad, even though I said I will never be like my dad. But boys will turn out like their fathers and marry women like their mothers, where daughters will turn out like their mothers and marry women like their fathers. And that's just the unfortunate truth. And unless we can recognize those characteristics and know what to do to beat it. And so it was still this life of this criminal mind, this mind of not knowing value, not knowing the value of consequences, not knowing the value of life, not knowing the power inside me, not knowing who I am, and not having a purpose. I thought a man's purpose, cowboys drink and fight. That's what they do, you know. I've spent half my life in the city, half my life in the country, half my life up north, and half my life down south. So I've spent a lot of time all over. I used to ride bulls and horses up in Waynesville, Ohio, and uh, and like I said, spent half my life down south in the big city of Chattanooga, Dayton, Ohio, up north, and then also in the country. I'm in the country right now in the south,
Okay.
But but I always thought my purpose was to somehow find a woman and have kids. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad purpose because that ended up being my life. Now, back up a few years, uh, being in Hillsboro, Ohio, I ended up getting shot in the face with a 44.
Yeah, tell us
Now,
that story.
so I used to live on the back of this automotive shop, and I worked in the coal mines of West Virginia and Pennsylvania on the weekends, and sometimes through the week. We travel, go underground in the coal mines, work a 30, 35-hour shift, 36-hour shift, and then we come home, be down for a couple days, and then we go back out. And we were drinking and partying a lot of card playing and stuff. A little bit of cocaine. And this guy had started hanging out with another guy that nobody hung out with, but he had started doing meth. So one of our buddies, the guy that shot me, ended up getting on meth. And his wife was like, I'm done with this. I'm leaving you. And it was like his fifth failed marriage. He had like 6 kids, different marriages, fifth failed marriage. His wife was leaving him. He was going to lose his house again. And really, that's the real reason. He had 5 or 6 reasons of why he did it when he went to court. And I don't even think he knew the reason of really why he did it. But one day he called me up. I had just got home from scoring some dope, and I just got home and I was doing some stuff with it, and he called me up and I couldn't understand him on the phone. He was like yelling and something on the phone. I was like, hey, Jim, what the hell are you talking about, man? Hung up the phone, and I called my dude across the street, Mark, and I'm like, hey, man, Jim just called me up, man. Sound like he's out of his damn mind. And next thing I know, he's walking in my front door with a 44 Magnum, doesn't say a word, lifts it up, blows my face off. I mean, face splattered all over the ceiling. My eyeball flew out. I watched my eye fly out of my head and land on the shelf above my sink. I
Damn.
saw I saw the blue in my eye.
So how did it go? I mean, did it go directly into the eye? Did it go through a cheek or chin and hit the eye? How did that happen?
It hit me in the cheek right here, luckily. And as it blew my head back, it like went up through my eye socket, my nose, and it kind of pushed it out. It missed my frontal lobe by about the width of a piece of paper. If it had hit my frontal lobe, it'd have blown my head all over the everywhere. My brain's everywhere. So I
Damn.
mean, it was about the width of a piece of paper that saved my life. So I'm stunned for a half a second, but during those moments, you're completely aware of you are hyper aware. You got adrenaline pumping, you got dopamine pumping, you got serotonin pumping. Your body's trying to save your life. So you're hyper aware of everything that's going on around you. You remember every single little detail. Anybody that's ever in a horrific accident like that and says they don't remember anything, it's probably because they just don't want to talk about it, because you
Yeah.
remember detail by detail by detail. And so I turned around. I was like, look, if I don't lay down, this dude's going to fucking shoot me again. And I'm obviously in no position to fight. So I'm like, so I lay down, and this pool of blood's just going out over the floor like this. And there was a guy out working in the shop. He had air compressors going. It was so loud, these big ass 200-gallon air compressors, and and they stopped for a second. And I started yelling for Brian. That was his name. I was like, Brian, get your ass in here. I'm being shot. And he still couldn't hear me. And the dude was like, oh, you ain't fucking dead yet, motherfucker. And he was like, and I'm looking, he's like clearly out of his mind. Like, this dude don't even know where he is. He's so fucking high. So he's like, so he steps over he puts the pistol to the back of my head, and I could just feel the pistol shaking against the back of my head. And I'm like, fuck, this is it. I'm about to fucking die. My brains are going all over this floor. And I was like, God, just forgive me of all my sins to you. I don't care about nothing else. Forgive me of all my sins to you. And I laid my head back down on the floor. And all of a sudden, I feel it come away from my head, and I see him walk. Like, all of a sudden, that jolted him to reality. I don't know if it was from mentioning God. I don't know if it was because he heard me praying. I guess
So I was going to ask that. Did you say that out loud or did you say it in your mind? So if you said it out loud, you never know.
I'm pretty sure I said it out loud. And I'm pretty sure that's why he stepped off. Like, it kind of jolted him. Like, all of a sudden, the look on his face kind of changed. Like, holy fuck! And then he was pacing back and forth, almost like he was coherent for a minute. Like, oh, holy shit, am I really doing this? So I'm like, well, I'm either going to bleed to death. This pool of blood is just fucking going out. And I'm either going to die right here on the floor, or he's going to shoot me again and I'm going to die, or there's a chance I can make it to this phone out here to call 911. So I get up off the floor and I look him in his face and I'm like, motherfucker, don't you shoot me again. And I walk past him out the front door to go to the front of the shop to get the shop phone to call 911. And he went bolting out of the shop. Like, I don't know. I mean, to see in my face probably freaked him out. The fact that I wasn't dead. But he went taking off out of the shop. And about the time I forgot to hit 9. Talk about the longest 30 seconds of your life. Like, it was probably like 5 seconds, but it felt like minutes. I didn't hit 9 to get out of the shop phone. I hit 911, and I had to hang the phone up and hit 911. I was like, damn. So I hit 911, call them. I'm like, hey, Jim just shot me. This is where I'm at. This is what happened. This is who shot me, blah, blah, blah. And about that time, Brian comes walking in. He's like, holy shit, man. He's getting rags, putting them on my face. My dude had heard the shot who I called on the phone. He had heard the shot over the phone because I was on the phone with him like this.
Oh
I was
shit.
on the phone with him like this when I got shot. And I dropped the phone. And so he threw his pants on, grabbed his 380 or his 38 or whatever, come running down. And he was like, and Jim had just ran out of the shop. He was like, who the fuck did this to you? And I was like, dude, Jim did it. He runs out the door to go find Jim. At the same time, another friend of ours was dropping a limo off. They had a limo service that we go ride around and party in the limo and stuff. He was dropping the limo off to be fixed, and he come walking in the shop. So he's helping Brian put rags on my head. This is about 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, and the ambulance shows up. I'm going in and out. They cut all my clothes off, give me some warm towels, and that's the last thing I remember. And then I wake up in the hospital, totally blind. I couldn't see, and this nurse was talking to me and holding my hand because I'd come back too. And, I just told her to tell my mom that I love her and, just let her know that, I'm sorry that I had been a bad son. And it was pretty rough. I had to learn how to see again. I had to learn how to walk again. I was in a coma for a week. When I came out of the coma, they were going to have to take this eye because of the percussion from the bullet was so powerful that it had swelled this eye up to the point where they were going to have to take it. They had decided to leave it, thank God, because eventually I was able to see out of it. But for the first couple of weeks, I had a walker. They get me out of bed, teach me how to walk with the walker, and and even though I was shot in the head, man, I had the nurses in there cracking up though. She was like, I can't believe you're in here telling jokes and you just got shot in the head. I was in there flirting with her, making jokes and stuff. I was like, I can't see you, but I bet you're pretty. I was just.
Did you think you were gonna die?
Did I think I was going to die afterwards or before?
No. On the way there, before you started your rehab and everything, like as you were basically as the ambulance picked you up that night, did you think you were gonna die?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. 100%. Yeah.
When you wake up at this point, yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. When you wake up, like if you can't see, what's your thoughts then? Do you even have any clue where you're at?
No, I knew I was in a hospital because she told me. She said, I'm nurse so and so, and you're at this hospital. We're going to care flight you to Miami Valley and Dayton. She started telling me, everything's going to be all right. This is where we're at. This is what's going on. And, and we've already talked to your mom. And of course, that's when I told her that. And right now you can't see, but you're in this hospital. And so, which of course she's telling me everything's going to be all fine, but I'm blind. I can't see. I know I saw my eye fly out of my head. And to me, I'm in a world of darkness and I'm going in and out. I'm waking up in like 5-10 second intervals, in and out of consciousness. So yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I didn't think I was going to make it.
What was the rehab time frame before you got your sight back?
About a week and a half to 2 weeks. Let's see, I was in a coma for about a week, And then I started walking. I was pretty determined to get out of that hospital. When I had got shot the first time in the lung, the diaphragm, spleen, intestines that came out my back, and I also got shot in the hand. I was out of the hospital in 2 weeks. They had to wait till my bowels worked again before they could let me go. They couldn't let me go until I used the restroom. I'm like, give me something to eat. Let's go. I'm ready to get out of here. So this time, so what about, I was in there about a total of 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks. And I got they took the bandages off, I think about week 2.
Okay. What was that like to finally be able to see? I mean, that had to be a relief.
Everything was very yellow at first. You know that
Okay.
song, It Was All Yellow?
Yeah.
Yes, just like that. Like everything seemed very yellow and slightly distorted. Um, just to pick this up right here, I could not do that. I would knock it over. My depth perception was totally gone.
Mm-hmm.
If you would have thrown anything to me, I couldn't have caught it. I had
Dang.
zero depth perception. I couldn't pick up a drink. I would have to move so slow over to it like this and eventually just touch it and eventually grab it. And even going from here to my mouth, it would take me like 3 minutes to take a drink.
Dang.
Yeah. Um, and part of that rehab with my sister in Georgia was on a softball team. And some months later, after I was out of the hospital and recovering, I got out in the yard with her and started learning how to throw softball back and forth again. Or I'd have somebody toss car keys to me back and forth. And then eventually, this church that I was going to, they had a softball team, and I talked them into letting me practice with them. And at first, every pitch was a whiffer. The first time I got a hold of it, then I was hitting home runs again. I was making dive plays in the outfield, but it took a lot of work to get to that point.
So now, where are you at with the addictions and the struggles at this point? I mean, was that? I mean, I don't want to. I guess a life changing experience for the better. Did you still have some lessons to learn? Where were you at with that?
No, I had terrible traumatic brain injury and PTSD. About 6 months after that happened, my brain was so rocked that I didn't leave the house for about another 2 years. I drank myself to death with about 2 bottles of whiskey a day and all the dope I could do on top of it.
Dang.
I didn't want to leave the house. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to go anywhere. I just had zero purpose in life. I was just drinking myself to death. I was too chicken shit to try to fucking shoot myself again, so I was drinking myself to death. And really that's what a lot of alcoholics do.
Yeah.
Is they're drinking themselves to death. They know they're drinking themselves to death. Because people don't really want to commit suicide. They want a way out, and they just don't know what that way is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, I needed relief. I just didn't know where to get it. But it was another 2 years. I ended up I met this girl, and for the first time in my life, she got pregnant, and I was 29. And to me, as I went back and told you, I thought my only purpose was to be a father. I thought that was my only purpose in life. And so when my son was conceived, that is the first time in my life that I really found out what having a purpose means.
Yeah.
They say you have to know your why. In order to succeed, you have to know your why. And it has to be bigger than yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that was my son. And I had gotten in a little bit of trouble. She was keeping my son from me and all kind of stuff. I'd gotten in a little bit of trouble and had to go to some AA meetings. And so I did everything alcoholically in my life. It was either all or nothing, never any level in between.
Yeah.
I was either doing it full force or nothing at all. So I did all these AA meetings. And while I was in there for the first time in my life, I really saw people that were truly living sober. You know, I didn't know that people really got sober. I just thought they were all lying. Like
Yeah.
everybody takes some kind of drug or drink or does something. But come to realize, like these guys really are not. And they're actually living normal lives. And that is when I started to really get to know people with normal lives. You know, Gary Jackson had introduced that to me, but I was just around it on such a consistent basis that I started to trust these people and see that they were really walking the walk.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I stayed sober for 7 days and I got drunk. Then I stayed sober for 14 and I got drunk. And then 30 days and then 60 days and then 90 days. And I just kept pushing because that's all I ever wanted to be was a father. And so after my son was born, I had to do something for him and for myself in order to rise above financially. And I could not work for any other company. My TBI, my PTSD. See, I was sober, and I did it for the first couple of years with zero medication because I didn't know what my mental ailments were. I didn't know what came
Right.
from alcohol and drugs and what was there from birth. So
Yeah.
I had to get sober for a while with nothing and find out what were my real mental ailments and what was from alcohol and drugs.
Yeah.
And so after that, I was able to see what I needed to do from there with my doctors. I was a guinea pig for like 10 years. I've experienced all different kinds of medications and what they're for and what type and you know had to study neuroplasticity, which the developing of neural connections in the brain. So I started learning about the brain and how it operates and neuroplasticity. I started learning biology and start learning really how the body operates, how the mind operates, and also and was able to start my own business. And I still got a picture of my first check from where I started my business almost 8 years ago now, actually. And it was like $763 from this apartment community that gave me the contract. And that was a miracle in itself. But so I started my own business. First I started with painting, something I had done my whole life I was very good at. And from there, I got another contract and another contract, another contract. Next thing you know, I'm making six figures. And get the hell out of there. I got out of my mom's house, which I was completely surrounded by drugs and alcohol when I got sober. I was still surrounded by poverty and drugs and alcohol when I got sober.
And that's hard. And that's hard when you battle addictions like that from such an early age, and to be around it and have it in your face is like the hardest because you know you would want to be around obviously none of those, a supporting cast around you to try to push you in those directions, and when it's just there when you turn around at every corner, it makes it 10 times as hard to be able to withstand it.
Now, I love my mother to death, but I'll be honest, man, for anybody out there who's trying to get sober in an environment like that, my mother used to put a packed bowl in the cabinet and she would ask me to go get her a cup. And I would open that door and see that packed bowl sitting there. Or she would ask me to go to the fridge and she would have a beer poured in the glass. It was like she hated my sobriety. You know, she would come to the AA meetings and insult me basically in front of everyone. And I can't blame her. I was a bad son for decades. I was a horrible son. I was a terrible son. I didn't even know what a son was supposed to be. So I'm not wrecking on my mom, but at the same time, if you can do it in a better environment, you should definitely do it in a better environment. But if you have no choice, you can still do it. You can
Mm,
still do it. It just might take a little more support and a little more effort on your part. You know.
yeah. Now you kind of, I guess from that point, you went on the uptick. Were you always like, you're obviously, anybody looking at this video can tell you're in pretty good shape. Were you always in good shape throughout your life, or did that kind of, more take effect later on?
No, my entire life I was told I was fat, ugly, and stupid. And so I always believe it. I never spoke to girls. I never talked to girls. My first girlfriend I ever had when I was 12 was cheating on me with a 22-year-old man. Um, I've experienced poor relationships, zero self confidence. I was fat most of my life. And I really thought I was ugly. It wasn't until about 4 years ago, I didn't realize that I was an attractive man. Even after I got in the best shape of my life, I still didn't realize I was an attractive man until I realized it for myself.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't anything anybody said to me. I just realized, wait a minute, I was told that my whole life because they were jealous of me, not because it was true, you know. So no, my whole life I was fat, ugly, and stupid, and I say that because in my own mind I was. In
Right.
my own mind I was, therefore it was true. Your mind, your beliefs are your reality. Whatever you believe, it shall be so.
Mm-hmm.
Your life will be whatever your beliefs are based on. If you believe that people are supposed to drink and do drugs and fight, that is exactly what your life will look like. If you believe that people are supposed to be successful, own businesses, and be kind and courteous, then that is what your life will look like. If you have a standard that you should be in shape, that you should be strong, healthy, capable, and able, is exactly what your life will look like through and through. And the way you do anything is the way you do everything. So once you get to a certain point of growth, you realize that, wait a minute, I have to stay up on even the smallest things because really the smallest things are what define who I am. You know, I can get away with all these things while nobody is watching. But that's not true because the way I do those things is the way that I do. If I'm half fast with this small stuff, I'll be half fast with this big stuff. And it will
Mm-hmm.
show and people will see it, you know. So to be able to put in that work no matter what. And that's after just coming back from a cat that I adopted. I had gotten cat scratch fever. I actually was down for about 8 months. You've seen my transformation over the last couple months. I did in 2 months what it normally would take me 3 to 6 months to do. I did it in 2 months now, um, and I'm just getting back in better shape as we go. You know.
I had no idea that was a real thing. I always just thought that was a song, Cat's Catch Fever.
Yeah, no, that's man, dude. My lymph nodes swelled up like a grapefruit. I had to cut it open. I was misdiagnosed by a hospital doctor, and luckily, I called my family doctor. I was near death again, and he's gave me the strongest antibiotics and steroids that he could give me. I ended up cutting it open and getting all the stuff out. I ended up coming back, but I had lost a lot of muscle mass, like I said, and but I already knew, and I had came here to recover and kind of get away from the fast life, recover in the country a little bit, and get my
Yeah.
health back. But I had already become a 100-degree man. So my natural life is a 100-degree life now. If you're an 85-degree man and you're blessed with a 100-degree life, you will lose all of it and come back to the man you believe you are. So, me seeing myself as a 100-degree man, if I am ever brought to an 85-degree life, I will bounce back to 100 within a quickness because that's how I believe that life should be for a man now. And so it happens a lot easier when you know how to change your beliefs and to form new beliefs and the way that we see the world and other people, you know. And
Didn't you didn't you start writing a book?
yes, actually, I so I've got a construction company. I've got 3 books that I'm writing. One that is finished on paper that I'm looking to publish this year, and it's about the laws of the universe, life, success, mental health, um, mental health, and overcoming trauma in your life. So I've come from Section 8, single mother, a life of trauma and chaos, and zero guidance or direction, and now I've become a man that starts businesses. I've become a man that that starts six-figure businesses that helps other people change their life, whether it's physical fitness or life coaching, relationships, whatever it is they want to improve in their life. That's what I help them do. And I know that there is a lot of coaches out there that are fake, and they're good salesmen, but they really don't have a lot to offer. I definitely ain't one of those fucking people. I am
Yeah.
definitely the real deal. I will show somebody everything I've learned in order to overcome these demons in my life and this trauma that I've seen and been through, to be the man that I wanted to be. And I still work on that every day. By no means am I where I want to. I'll never be where I want to be.
Right.
I'll never be there.
It's always, I think there's always work that can be done and tweaked and polished and everything, no matter where you're at. And then even if you think that you're there, then there's always work to help get somebody else there, because that's the biggest thing, like you're saying, is to help show other people how it's done, give them advice, show them pointers, bring them along. Because, I mean, if we're not helping each other, then what are we really doing?
Exactly, exactly. You go from being dependent as a child and early teens to learning how to be independent, and a lot of people thinks that's where it stops, is when we learn independence. But really, the next level of maturity after that is interdependence, and that's really learning how to work with, teach, or help other people properly, and not out of narcissism, not out of not out of some grandiose self image, but helping other people because you know that that's what God's put you here to do, and you're going to do it because of that. And that also involves knowing when to tell people, sorry, I can't help you.
Right,
There's that too. Um, but but interdependence is definitely, and that's something that I have to work on harder and harder each day, because I have to understand that some of these people, now, don't get me wrong, I'll be a total asshole because I will always tell the truth. The truth, love ain't lies. You know,
right,
love is not lies. If you love and care about another person, you will tell them the truth, no matter how bad it makes you look. And there is a lot of people that don't like me because I tell the truth. And it is a very hard thing to do. But if you're a leader, that's just what you got to do, is piss some motherfuckers off. But in the end, when they see that love, and in the end, when they make those changes and when they're ready, they come back and they're like, you know what? I am glad you said that. I just wasn't ready to hear it at the time, but you
hmm
know, but I needed that.
If somebody's trying to get in touch with you, where would they go to track you down?
Pirate Life Fitness on Instagram. So, and when I get my book published, I'll definitely advertise that, and hopefully here soon. I've got my construction business back up and going, at the beginning of the year, hopefully full force, and of course fitness, just about every day,
Hmm.
and dieting, of course, every day.
Yeah.
But yeah, Pirate Life Fitness on Instagram. I haven't been on my YouTube much, but I do have a YouTube channel, Pirate Life Fitness, on YouTube.
And we'll put up links to those in our show notes. I enjoy your Instagrams. It's like those, they have those things where it's like it's AI generated voices, but it's always like, get up, motherfucker, let's go tackle the day or something. I always get those type of vibes whenever I hear your videos, because it's not just like somebody. Some of them you're in the gym, but like the other day, like you were doing some sheetrock work. I know what that is because I come up doing that with my old man. He was a sheetrock guy, and I fucking hated every minute of it. I knew that that was not going to be a profession I was going to do. I didn't mind everything until the sanding. I hated the sanding. And you were sanding a door while you were talking, or at least there was a clip of you sanding a door, and I could just feel that shit going all over my face, and I was just like, damn, I was like, I'm so glad I didn't go into that industry. But then I'm sure people say the same thing about welding because I've been burnt to hell and back, with sparks, and people would think I'm not doing that, I'll get burnt up, but I think I've done it. It was used as punishment sometimes with my dad if I done something or if I fucked up, all right, you got to come to work for me and you're not getting paid for it either. And I'm just like, man, I'm having to do all this shit. It's cold, you're doing it in the winter and that dust and shit. I hated every minute of it. But I do get those vibes from your videos of like, all right, motherfucker, let's go. Let's tackle the day. Get it when you're tired. Let's when you go harder. I mean, those types of things. So I think people will get a kick out of your Instagram. So we're going to put that in the show notes for them to go follow you. Let us know when the book comes out. We might have you back on. We'll do a quick episode, plug the book, let everybody know where they can get it. And thank you so much for coming on the show, man, and sharing your story. And we're definitely going to stay in touch, going forward. I got some other shows I can probably get you on as well.
Absolutely, brother. Man, I keep tweaking that book. I definitely want to make that book as correct and right as possible. I don't
Right.
want to be too hasty to put it out just because I got it finished on paper. Um, doesn't mean I'm still adding to it, but I definitely want it to be something that people can read forever and
Yeah.
always learn something new. But I don't want it to be so long that it bores them to death. That's why I'm going to
Yeah.
put it in 3 books. And it's going to include physical fitness as well. But I definitely want to make sure that I give people everything that they're looking for that will help their life. That is for sure. So thank you,
10
man.
4, brother.
I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share my story, man. And yeah, we'll definitely be in touch in the future, man. That's good looking out, man. I hope that helps a lot of people. If take what you want, leave what you don't. It's up to you.
10 4. Well, everybody go check out his Instagram. Again, like I said, we'll put it in the show notes of this episode. That'll do it for today's episode of Crime and Entertainment. Johnathan, we appreciate you stopping by the show, my brother.
Thank you, boss.
All right.